But are both parties ready to proceed on both cases, both as petitioner and as respondent?
And so just a matter of housekeeping, Your Honor, as it relates to, I guess he's both the petitioner and the respondent, the exhibits, I am not certain of exactly what exhibits counsel intends to present. When we submitted our exhibits, we did list and ensure that opposing counsel was on, anything that we sent over to the clerk. So I'm not certain at this point of what his exhibits are, because based on that, we might have some motions to try to limit some of those exhibits we have going on, Your Honor.
Okay. Would y'all like to go into a breakout room for just a minute? Because as I understand, is it Messiah? Is that how you? Okay, just want to make sure I pronounce it correctly. That you were fairly late entry into the case. Is that correct?
That I was a late entry, Your Honor?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, you weren't in the beginning.
I was not in at the beginning, Your Honor. But our last hearing, I was actually present. So this had been continued. I actually had a funeral to attend. Unfortunately, my paralegal, his wife had passed. And so I had an out-of-state funeral that I needed to attend. So this was continued. So there should have been, sufficient time to be able to, sort of list the exhibits and let me know which exhibits, or at least include
the filing and that sort of thing.
Yes, Your Honor. All right. So I guess we're in breakout room.
Oh, no, Judge, I think you're muted there.
Every time I come back on, I'm muted, but I was speaking and everyone else's face froze. So I had no idea whether you heard me or whether,
idea, Judge.
whether anybody was trying to say anything to me. Oh, man. So Judge, I was offering you the opportunity, if you wanted to discuss your documents that may streamline things once we get into the hearing. We don't, this is a hybrid type case. It's not completely under the Civil Practice Act, but we try to do it as close thereto as we can. But, there is no technical discovery. But if y'all can just, exchange if there are issues that Ms. Messiah mentioned that y'all could look at and determine in advance what your arguments may be.
The only problem we have, Judge, is that we have 40-ish exhibits.
Yes, I noticed the file was full.
It is a lot, Judge. And I mean, I could run through the titles with opposing counsel, but like if we were to sit there and
okay, well, here's my alternate suggestion then. As you come to one that you wish to present, can you give us, in 5 words or less, what it purports to be?
Oh yeah, no problem, Judge.
And then that maybe if Ms. Messiah has an objection based on the topic or the subject matter of that exhibit, we'll just address them as we come to them. That's the only way I can think of. It's not like, hand it to you at the table before you present it to the witness, sure. Unfortunately. So when it opens up for everybody. So, or we could have it open up and counsel could take a quick look at it before anything is said or done with it.
It's fine with me, Judge.
Okay. Ms. Messiah, how about you?
That's fine, Your Honor. Or to the extent that Mr. Brixton had sent over his exhibits, if he could just forward that email to me, because again, I wasn't on the email. So if he could forward that, then that'll give me some sense as to what the exhibits may be. And, I could maybe try to take a look at them while we're
okay.
Judge, if I may, because I know that our exhibits came in multiple different emails to the court. Is there any way that the court clerk could forward them to Ms. Messiah? And that way they're just all in one.
Ms. Broom, is that possible?
No, Judge, it's not. I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry. All right. I'm low tech here, so I have to depend on everyone else to tell me. So if you send them in individual emails or whatever to the clerk's office, we can't sit here while he forwards you 40 emails either.
Right. I mean, obviously I should have been CC'd on, on the emails in the first place, but in the interest of moving forward, Your Honor, we'll just, as they come to bear, we'll just deal with them as they come about, if that's okay, since it doesn't seem like there's any, real reasonable alternative. I believe he's frozen. I believe, Your Honor.
Well, I don't know if they were filed before you entered the case.
Oh, Judge, you were frozen for about the last minute. As soon as Ms.
Well,
Messiah was done talking, you just
I'll top that by saying all of you were frozen when I was
Perfect.
listening to Ms. Messiah say that she'd just address them one by one. I could still hear her, but everyone else had their eyes closed and never opened them. I hope we can make it through this today, the way things are going. I'm not optimistic, but we got to finish it up sometime today.
fingers
All
crossed.
right. Now, the first case, of course, the oldest case was filed by Mr. Schulman. So he will be the first petitioner that we hear from. Do each counsel want to give me an opening statement before we begin?
Judge, I have a very brief opening.
Thank you. Brief is a good word.
All right. Your Honor, may I begin?
Frozen.
Oh,
Okay, now you're open.
thank you, Judge. May I begin?
Yes, please.
All right. Your Honor, this case is between two parties, Mr. Shea Schulman and Lauren Cawley. It's a cross-file TPO, as the court is aware. As the evidence will show, the two parties were in a relationship that started in April of last year. Ms. Cawley moved in roughly around August to Mr. Schulman's house in Brookhaven. From around December of 2022 to now, there was a breakdown in that relationship caused by Ms. Cawley's mental health and addiction issues, leading to multiple instances of both verbal and physical violence that she committed against Mr. Schulman. Now, additionally, Ms. Cawley has stalked Mr. Schulman using multiple phone numbers, even reaching out to his friends, family, neighbors, co-workers. And today we are here asking for a protective order to ensure that Mr. Schulman's safety from Ms. Cawley.
All right. Thank you. You adhered to the briefness there.
I try,
Thank you.
Judge.
All right, Ms. Messiah, do you wish to open or give your opening now?
Your Honor, I'll spare you the basic facts in terms of the relationship, as I believe that Mr. Bixon has summed it up perfectly, except that, my client has the same claims in that, Mr. Schulman had become abusive to her, and in that she had to take out a TPO in order to be protected. Mr. Schulman too has called Ms. Cawley's business, has called her family members. And quite frankly, it seems like there's just been some harassment from Mr. Schulman as well. Being an attorney, arguably, should have known better. We intend to present physical evidence, Your Honor, where Mr. Schulman has put his hands on Ms. Cawley. And unlike Mr. Schulman, it hasn't been a smear campaign. Unfortunately, in an attempt to protect himself from the protective order, he's gone on this smear campaign of Ms. Cawley, filing multiple cases against her in an attempt to try to get her to drop this civil suit.
All right, Mr. Bixon, if you'll proceed with your first witness.
Yes, Judge. I'd like to call Mr. Shea Schulman to stand or his computer.
You just raise his right hand and swear him in. And let me ask, I did forget to ask, does either party have any witnesses besides the parties?
Judge, we have possibly, it depends. We have one other witness, and that is Miss Erica Parsons.
Okay, and where is that person physically located as we speak?
She's here in the office with us, Judge.
Okay, need for her to be sequestered somewhere in your office in another room or whatever.
I'll have her step out.
Okay, please. And Ms. Messiah, do you have any?
No, Your Honor, but if we, to the extent that Ms. Parsons is going to be introduced, if we, could address any objections at that time, if Your Honor would like to hear them now.
Let's wait until when and if the person is called.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, Mr. Bixon.
All right.
You'll swear in your witness.
Thank you. Do you swear and affirm the following testimony you're about to give this court is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Let me lower your hand. All right. Can you please give us your name for the record?
My name is Shay Schulman.
Okay. And Mr. Schulman, do you know why we're here today?
We are here because I am seeking an order of protection against Lauren Colley.
Okay. Now, how do you know Miss Colley?
Ms. Colley was my girlfriend for approximately 10 or so months.
Okay. Did she move in with you at any point?
She did. In about August, I invited her to move into the home that I had purchased in Brookhaven.
Okay, got it. I'd like to fast forward a little bit to December 25th of 2022. Do you remember that date?
I do.
Can you tell the court about what happened then?
That was obviously Christmas, and that was the day that I walked in and caught Miss Colley red-handed, abusing nitrous oxide, which commonly referred to as whippets.
Got it. Okay. When you caught her using these whippets or this nitrous oxide, what happened?
Objection, Your Honor. I'm going to object to this line of questioning. If I understood Your Honor correctly, and the way these proceedings are supposed to go, it's based on the allegations of, a particular day, not what happened in Christmas. And my understanding from Mr. Schulman's own petition, he's alleging that there was an altercation of family violence on January 27th. So we're talking about more than a month earlier. They're talking about allegedly something that happened on Christmas.
Judge, there's a number of reasons why we have to bring this up. One, Miss Colley's history of drug abuse is a very significant factor in this case. It's also a significant factor in terms of some of the later lies that she told. It's also a significant factor in terms of how she ended up where she is, as well as how the situation actually unfolded between her and Mr. Schulman. If we don't have the background history to this case, we have no context to really dive into what actually happened on the days in question.
Well, as I recall from reviewing the petition does contain the allegations of the constant use or the regular use or whatever of, and somebody needs to inform me as to what nitrous oxide is and whippets. I'll have to admit, after 40 years, that's a new one for me.
It was new for me at the time, Your Honor, as well.
All right. Now, Mr. Schulman, and I apologize, Judge, I just sort of went back into it.
I'm sorry, I'll overrule the objection.
Okay. Mr. Schulman, are you familiar with what whippets or nitrous oxide is?
At the exact moment in time, no. But after I observed the use of it, basically what I observed is there's these whipped cream canisters that are used for making whipped cream in the culinary field. And you insert nitrous oxide canisters, which is basically laughing gas, into it to pressurize it. But Ms. Colley was using this culinary device to directly inhale the nitrous oxide into her lungs, which deprives the brain of oxygen and triggers a hallucinatory effect.
Okay. How many of these whippet canisters did you see?
On the 25th, I saw several hundred, and then upon later inspecting the furniture in my home, I found thousands of them hidden away in various places throughout my house.
Understood. So after you caught Miss Colley using these whippet canisters, what happened?
I was very disturbed and concerned. I had very strong feelings for Miss Colley, and I didn't want to immediately terminate my relationship with her. So I told her that the only way we could continue living together and potentially have a future together was if she sought counseling. She'd undergone some trauma. She'd lost her father, and I was sympathetic. And I thought that with counseling and help, she could get better.
Okay. Did she end up going to counseling?
So she told me that she enrolled in a counseling program. She printed out a brochure, an itinerary of this program, and told me that she enrolled and was attending regular therapy on a weekly basis. But I later learned that that was actually not true.
Okay. When you found out that it wasn't true, what did you do?
Well, so there was a relapse period where again, I came home and she was passed out with the whippets that caused her to lose consciousness. And that was, I guess, 2 or so weeks after the initial period. And again, I reiterated that she needed to be in counseling. And then I found out around January 26th that everything that she told me about enrolling in counseling was actually not true.
Okay. So she didn't end up going to any type of mental health program or addiction program?
I can't say definitively about what she did or did not do, if she went to some sort of free program or whatnot, but the program and facility that she printed out the brochure and itinerary for and told me that she was attending, she confessed that she had not actually enrolled in it. She said she couldn't afford it.
Were you okay with her remaining at your residence at that point?
No, at that point, about on the 26th, when I realized that she'd been untruthful about enrolling in the counseling program, excuse me, I requested that she move out within 60 days.
Okay. I'd like to turn to the next date. Do you remember January 27th of 2023?
I do.
Okay. Can you tell the court about what happened?
So January 26th was when I basically made it clear that she was going to have to move out. And at that point, her behavior became very abusive, erratic, and hostile. And she became physically combative to the point where on the 27th, when it continued, I began recording some of our conversations. And, again, I was adamant that she move out within 2 months. And that's when she essentially snapped and became abusive, both verbally and physically.
Can you describe to the court how she was physically abusive?
From a physical perspective, it was pushing, shoving, trying to affect when I tried to get away from her. I basically, when things became a little bit scary for me, I repeatedly tried to de-escalate by getting away from her. I requested that she stay downstairs. I would go upstairs. We should not be in the same room together. And when I then would try to leave, she would shove me, grab me. I can recall 3 specific instances where she initiated physical contact with me.
Okay. And you referenced verbal abuse as well. Can you tell the court about what she said to you?
There's a lot of them were personal attacks. They were very hurtful, abusive, and seemed, in my opinion, in hindsight, designed to provoke me in some way, shape, or form.
Do you remember anything specific that she said to you?
One particularly anti-Semitic slur sticks out.
What was that?
The verbatim language is cheap, shitty Jew.
Okay. All right. And there were multiple instances of these verbal and physical acts that she committed against you on that day, not just one?
They typically came when I was trying to get away from her, to literally say, you stay downstairs, I will go upstairs, let's just separate.
Okay. What happened after all these instances of abuse that you suffered that day?
So at some point on the 27th, she became aware that I was recording our interactions. I believe I actually told her so to try to diffuse the situation, because, I figured if she knew she was being recorded, she might calm down. She was saying and doing very horrible things. But that actually triggered her to get more physically confrontational, because she then repeatedly tried to take my phone away to delete the recordings that I had obtained.
Okay. And what happened after that?
She grappled with me at that point, so I went upstairs, and for maybe 5 minutes or so, she stayed away from me. And then she pursued me upstairs, began trying to fight for the phone. At that point, I said I was going to leave the house. She was adamant that I not leave the house, but again, I was adamant that I leave the house. And then to try to keep me from leaving the house, she then attempted suicide directly in front of me.
How did she attempt suicide?
So she was repeatedly asking me to
Second, Your
watch
Honor.
her.
Okay, hold on, Mr. Shulman. You got an objection?
Objection, Your Honor. Again, we're going in my contention, this is a smear campaign. We're going into an alleged suicide, and it's not speaking specifically to the allegations of any violence that Ms. Culley has allegedly, or Mr. Schulman has allegedly suffered at the hands of Ms. Culley. So if it's not specifically trying to hurt, harass, upset Mr. Coleman, I'm not understanding why we're going into these allegations of suicide at this point, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Bixson.
Judge, I thought that we had resolved this issue prior, but on top of that, we've already, leading up to this, described multiple instances of violence that Mr. Schulman has suffered from Ms. Culley, and we're about to get into more due to her attempted suicide. So I mean, I don't even begin to see what the issue is here.
Well, Ms. Messiah, it is in the petition. It was alleged in the petition, so it's not a surprise as to what the basis of their case may be. I'm going to overrule the objection. You may proceed. And it is a component that I see in many family violence cases. So it's not unusual.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, Mr. Bixson.
All right. So, Mr. Schulman, describe to the court this attempted suicide of Ms. Culley.
So she was adamant that I see something. She went and opened a drawer full of prescription pill bottles, grabbed two, removed the tops, and dumped all of the pills onto the floor, took a fistful, grabbed a cup of water, and then brought the pills to her mouth.
Okay. Did you see her do this?
It was directly in front of me, yes, in the bedroom at this point.
And what did you do?
When she brought the pills to her mouth, I immediately intervened, grabbed her by the wrist to pull the hand away from her mouth and to stop her from taking pills, and then said I had to call 911.
Was she resisting you when you were trying to stop her from taking the pills?
Very aggressively. She was adamant that I not call 911. I called 911 and she actually knocked the phone from my hand because I had one hand holding her wrist, the other hand trying to call the police. And so she knocked the phone from my hand, and, you know, I was being as gentle as humanly possible in that moment, but also trying to stop her from harming herself. And, you know, she punched me at one point and actually spat on me at another point.
Okay. After you called 911, did the police arrive?
The police did arrive.
And what happened when they arrived?
I provided them with all of the recordings of the incident that I had. So this is what was concerning to me and why I played the recordings is during the scuffle when I was calling 911, Ms. Culley threatened me and said, if you better not call 911. If you do, it's going to go bad for both of us. I'm going to tell them that you hit me. I was undeterred at that point because I mean, she was trying to hurt herself and I didn't have a choice. But so when the police got there, they immediately separated us. And I just told the police officer, I'm just going to play you all of the recordings that I have. I showed them the text messages as well. And Ms. Culley had also texted a friend threatening suicide. So there were two textual instances of her threatening suicide, plus my recordings. So they did ultimately conclude that she needed to be taken to a hospital and placed on a psych hold.
Okay. Did she just go to a psychiatric facility? Did they take her anywhere else?
So she did not go to a psychiatric facility, which is where I desperately wanted her to go. It turned out she had a bench warrant out for her arrest for a failure to appear. So instead of going to a place where she could get help, they took her to the DeKalb County jail.
Okay. And did you just let her sit there?
No. In hindsight, it was probably an error in judgment, but I felt horrible about the situation. And I actually posted her bond to have her taken out of jail as soon as it was humanly possible to do so.
Okay. Now, all of this is January 27th. I'd like to fast forward a little bit to February 1st of 2023. Do you remember that day?
I do.
Okay. Can you tell the court about what happened on that day?
February 1st was my 35th birthday. At that point, so when Ms. Culley returned to my home, after being bailed out of jail, she told me that she had contracted COVID. So for the 3 or so days leading up to my birthday, I quarantined at home with her. She then, though, went out several times to purchase presents and decorations and so on and so forth for my birthday. It was very, very nice, and was basically trying to make amends for what had happened in the days preceding.
Okay. What happens after that?
So we probably made it till about 3 p.m. on the 1st with
First of what, of February?
The first
February,
February, Judge, yes.
Okay, yeah, please try to clarify dates. I'm big on chronology of events here.
Will do, Your Honor.
Thank you.
So on the 1st of February until about 3, we were on kind of best behavior. And it was at 3 p.m. or around there, I'm approximating, Your Honor, that she asked me if, based on the past couple of days, if I had reevaluated my decision to have her move out in 60 days. And I said no, that it was for both of our mental health and safety if she had her own living space or if we ever had conflict in the future.
So did she remain at your residence?
When I told her that I was still resolute on my decision to have her leave the home, she began to escalate and become hostile again. There were no incidences of physical abuse or confrontation that I can recall, but
On that day when you say
on the 1st, yes. Okay. And I actually slept, downstairs on the couch. And the following morning, she left the house voluntarily and said she was going to go to Charleston for the remainder of the week to stay with friends.
After she left, did she reach out to you at all?
So pretty much constantly from the 2nd to the 4th, I received constant strings of text messages and phone calls, all of them harassing.
Okay. Did she contact you from multiple numbers?
Yes. So on the 3rd, I believe, is when it finally got to the point where I was forced to block her listed
And
number.
let me interrupt you for a second. You said when you say the third what?
I'm sorry, of February.
Okay. All right. So these texts and these calls continue past February 1st.
They've been near constant up until the ex parte order was entered in this case.
Did she threaten you at all during that period of time?
Repeatedly, she said,
Your Honor, he's
Okay.
leading. He's leading, Your Honor. And
Okay.
it's been a couple of times and I've just let it go. He's leading, Your Honor.
All right. Rephrase your question, please.
Yeah, Judge, I honestly don't remember which one I left out on. I think it was threatening.
Yeah, on something to do with threats. Please
I got you.
rephrase.
In the messages that she sent, let me re-ask that again.
characterize them.
That's fine. Yeah, I mean, can you characterize any of those messages that you received?
There were different types. A lot of them were simply abusive, inflammatory, poking, trying to get a rise. They gradually began to escalate, though, as I ignored the messages, they increased in both frequency and hostility. Several of the messages threatened to release compromising pictures of me, to badmouth me in the legal community, and to ruin my profession, my professional reputation, excuse me.
Okay. What did you do in response to this?
I blocked the numbers, and basically Ms. Colley, she has some sort of application or website where she can create fictitious numbers that show as out-of-state numbers. I don't know if it's listed in the petition, but I am a civil trial attorney, one of the 3 partners at my firm. One of my duties is intaking new clients. So unfortunately, I don't have the luxury of being able to ignore numbers when they call in, whether it be on the weekend or what have you. But there were a constant string of random out-of-state numbers that would begin sending me harassing phone calls and text messages.
Okay. And all of this was between, or can you tell the court what dates this happened between?
Everything that I'm referring to took place between February 2nd and February 4th of last year, 2022.
What did you do in response to this?
I asked her to stop contacting me, and ultimately on the 4th, after a particularly venomous phone call at around 4 or 5 p.m. on the 4th, I told Ms. Cawley that I no longer felt safe with her coming back to my home.
Okay.
I volunteered to put her in an Airbnb for 30 to 60 days. I told her I would give her access to all of her property. I would do everything, but I did not feel safe having her stay in the home anymore, specifically because she was threatening to essentially extort me, but also in the phone call, she told me, again, threatened that she would accuse me of being or allege to people in the police that I was physically violent with her.
What steps did you take to ensure that she wouldn't be able to enter back into the residence?
The only real step that I took was my lock on the front door is like a smart lock. So I revoked her 4-digit access code from the lock.
I want to fast forward to February 5th of 2023. Can you tell the court what happened then on February 5th?
Yeah, February 5th, 2022 at 6 a.m.
2022.
Okay.
Oh, 2023.
What year?
We're in 2023.
Okay. I've been writing 2022 a lot myself.
Yeah, no, I still need to change.
Go ahead.
So 2023, this year, at 6 in the morning, I was woken up by 2 members of the Brookhaven Police Department at my front door who were there with Miss Cawley.
Okay. What happened with them?
Miss Cawley demanded entry and access to the residence. She claimed rights as a tenant at will. And the police officers told me that I had to let her back in.
Okay. What did you tell the officers?
For about 20 to 30 minutes, I begged and I pleaded with them not to force me to let her back in. Actually, I literally said, unless there's a criminal statute that I'm violating and you are going to take me to jail, I'll pay a fine, I'll do whatever. Again, I reiterated my offer to get an Airbnb, to literally do anything to prevent her from coming back into the home and staying with me, because I was legitimately in fear that something bad would happen if she was permitted to come back in. But ultimately, they told me, after one of the officers went to the vehicle to research, that if I did not let her in, they would arrest me for criminal trespass.
So did you end up letting her back in?
When the officers informed me that there was a criminal statute that would trigger liability and it wasn't civil, because again, I was willing to pay whatever fine, ticket, whatever. I would have paid for a wrongful eviction. I would have done it. But they told me they would take me to jail. I wasn't willing to do that, so I allowed her. I obeyed the officer's direction, let her back in the house.
What happened after she returned inside?
Literally, as soon as the police were gone, the same behavior immediately continued. There was back and forth. After maybe a minute or two of that, I said, okay, again, this is at around 7 in the morning. I said, I'm going upstairs to my room. Please stay away from me. And I went upstairs to my room and closed and locked the bedroom door.
And what happened after that?
After maybe 4 to 5 seconds, Mrs. Cawley followed me upstairs, began banging on the bedroom door, demanding that I let her in. She was saying that it was her house too. She had a right to be anywhere in the house. And if I didn't open the door, that she would call the police back. And I saw how that went the first time around.
So did she remain outside?
Went on for a little bit of time, and then she began counting down, and I wasn't eager to have the police back in the home. So I did unlock the door, and she stormed into the bedroom at that point.
Okay. And what happened after she stormed back into the bedroom?
There was some back and forth. I told her to get her clothes and leave. I offered to even help her get her clothes so she could leave the bedroom. I did not want to be around her, and I honestly wanted to just go back to sleep. She then went into my closet and began tearing down clothes that apparently she had gifted me for Christmas or what have you. And then upon exiting my closet, she tried to actually initiate physical contact with me. And then, like, literally right after that is when she started yelling that I hit her.
Was there any physical contact on your part with her?
I did not initiate any physical contact with her in that entire interaction.
All right. Did the police come back out?
So upstairs in the bedroom still, she immediately dialed 911. She was sitting on the floor at this point. She told me I was going to jail. I was going to have my law license taken, a whole litany of threats. She called 911, told the 911 operator that I was armed and dangerous, and was pretty hysterical. And then the 911 operator told her that the police were coming back, and she became very calm and walked downstairs.
Do you know why she told the police that you were armed and dangerous?
I can't speculate as to what she was thinking, but it scared me because I did not want police coming into the house, weapons drawn. So after thinking about it for a second, I literally went downstairs and placed my hands on my head and waited for the police to come back.
What happened after the police came?
The police were there almost immediately. I don't even think the original set of police were out of the neighborhood yet. So like all of this literally took place in the span of 12 to 15 minutes. So the 2 original police came, and then 2 additional police officers came, investigated, and they examined her body, the scene. There was no evidence, obviously, and they concluded that very quickly and said that no arrest would be made because there's no evidence of any type of physical altercation or assault.
Did you stay in the home after that?
The police told us that they wanted to mediate a resolution because they obviously couldn't leave us alone at that point because there was an allegation of physical violence. And it was at that point I reiterated my request to get her an Airbnb, 30, 60 days, however long. She declined that offer again, and actually was telling the police that we could stay in the house together and she would stay in the guest bedroom and so on and so forth. I rejected that idea and said that under no circumstances could I stay in the home with her anymore. And I volunteered to leave my own house at that point, and basically resolved to get myself a protective order as soon as the courts opened.
Okay. I want to turn to the next day, February 6th. Do you recall February 6th?
I do.
Can you tell the court about what happened on February 6th?
That was the day that I filed my petition. The Brookhaven Police Department contacted me to come down and provide all of my recordings and evidence and so on and so forth, because apparently this caller had gone to them for a second or third time. I don't know the exact time period, but she had actually gone to the police station to try to swear out a warrant against me. I also received a phone call from a woman who identified herself as Amy Weaver.
And do you know who is Miss Weaver?
At the time, I had no idea. When I Google searched her name, though, I found her LinkedIn and learned that she was the head of human resources at a company called Fiber Visions, which is the company that I believe Lauren had told me she worked at.
And so she called you.
Correct.
And what did she say to you?
She told me that she had removed property from my house that made Lauren feel unsafe, and she had dropped it off at the Gwinnett County Police Department.
She didn't ask you about, did she ask you about moving it at all?
No.
Before she, okay.
Yeah, no.
Now, were you able to, I guess, see Miss Weaver in your home at any point?
Your Honor,
That's fine.
Okay.
Can you tell the court whether?
Rephrase.
Yes, Judge. Can you tell the court whether or not you had any other interactions with Miss Weaver?
Not directly, but on the 4th, when basically when I was being threatened and came to the conclusion that having her in the house was dangerous, I actually went and installed, I made sure that my Ring camera was fully charged, and I installed a hallway camera, clearly visible hallway camera, mind you, in the home. I actually ordered 2 or 3 more like quality security cameras, basically to have coverage of the house to make sure that there were no incidents, like basically what happened the very next day.
So what happened with Miss Weaver at your house?
So because of the hallway camera, I was able to watch Miss Weaver, who came over to my house at about 8 p.m. apparently at Lauren's invitation. Miss Weaver came
Your Honor,
with,
that's
Hold
Your
on.
Honor. Speculative.
All right, look, Mr. Dixon,
I observed it.
your response to the objection.
Judge, it's not speculative. He's telling you the court what he observed.
Well, he said apparently at the invitation of Ms. Cawley.
Fair enough, Judge.
Okay.
There's audio.
Yeah,
on
don't
the
speculate on apparent. Just tell us what you know or what you don't.
There was audio on the camera and also a Ring video doorbell where I observed Lauren open the door for Mrs. Weaver and say, "Thank you for coming over."
And what happened after that?
I then watched Miss Weaver walk around my house with a drawn firearm and pistol, presumably patrolling it, and locking it down.
And were you able to hear Miss Weaver through the audio?
I was able to hear many of her conversations with Lauren at that time. Yes.
Do you recall any of those conversations?
An objection, Your Honor. This is not in the scope of his petition. And even as it relates to the petition in itself, you know, the petition specifically calls for acts of violence. I'm not certain, again, the relevance of this alleged person, Miss Weaver, and don't see her throughout Mr. Schulman's petition at all.
Mr. Dixon.
Judge, I'll make it brief. The issue is here that Miss Cawley has essentially, through her lies, time and time again, created hazardous situations where Mr. Schulman's life has been in danger. Briefly earlier, we mentioned the fact that she called the police and told them that he was armed and dangerous, despite no evidence of doing so. Now she's inviting another person into Mr. Schulman's house who's walking around with a firearm. That's, I think, should be of grave concern to the court when dealing with a particular family violence.
Well, the observation of that, the visual observation of that, both parties can argue that later, as far as in your closing. But as far as the conversations, what's your response regarding any alleged conversations that were overheard through the camera system, security system, between Ms. Cawley and this person, Ms. Weaver, as far as admissibility or even relevance related to that petition?
There's really only one conversation, one statement, in fact, Judge, that I was about to get to that I think is relevant for this discussion.
And the relevant, what about the issue of it not being in the petition?
The specific statement?
Well, the general situation that arose that day is not referenced in the petition.
And Judge, I think that it comes back to the false allegations of the guns that were in the petition, as well, again, it's just the nature of family violence. It's just repeated instances over and over and over.
All right, I'm going to overrule the objection. I'll allow this one conversation as it relates to the issues at hand.
Okay. Mr. Schulman, I will, Judge. Do you remember, I guess, were there any conversations that stood out to you?
Ms. Weaver and Lauren discussed using the gun on me if I returned to the home. Specifically, Ms. Weaver, the conversation was basically, what happens if he comes back? And Ms. Weaver replied, if he comes back, we'll say we're in fear for our lives and I will shoot. And this is also after the police officers on multiple occasions had told Mrs. Cawley that I had every right to be in the house. I was voluntarily leaving and could come back at my own discretion at any time.
Okay.
Same objection, Your Honor, but.
All right, your objection's noted, but I've already overruled it. All right, let's move on to something else, please.
Gotcha. Mr. Schulman, Can you tell the court of other instances where?
Excuse me, Mr. Bixson. Let me also clarify my reasoning in overruling your objection is that your client was allegedly a party to this conversation. And certainly she's here to testify, and you certainly are going to be able to cross-examine Mr. Shulman. So I feel that it meets the criteria as far as admissibility. All right, go ahead.
Who else did Miss Colley reach out to in regards to you after that point?
Numerous people. She reached out to my baby sister, my mom.
Yeah, go ahead. That actually is in the petition, Ms. Messiah. I saw you shaking your head. I was just getting ready to stop him.
I'm just going to let him run with it.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Shulman. I apologize for interrupting.
Nope. Thank you, Your Honor. To my baby sister, my mom, one of the attorneys that works for me, my law partner, to all of my neighbors via the neighborhood Facebook group. That's all I can think of right now.
What did she tell them?
That I was violent.
Hold on now. We're not going down that road.
Gotcha,
Okay.
Judge. Understood. Let me see where it was. Okay. What other communications did you have with Miss Weaver? On February 6th of 2023?
I'm just telling her to return my property.
All right. Okay. Now, I know that obviously we're here because you found this TPO. How many other TPOs have you been made aware of that have been filed against Ms. Colley since you filed this?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
All right, Mr. Bixson, I know it was in the petition, but what's the relevance of any?
Judge, I think it's extremely relative in terms of whether or not someone, if I have 10 TPOs against me that have been filed, I think it's very relevant for the 11th. Even if they're coming from different places, it goes to plan, proof, motive. I mean, it's a cycle of the same action, Judge.
Are you prepared to present some physical evidence of that, or?
We have them if we need to, Judge.
Okay.
You have the witnesses?
We have the TPOs.
If you don't have the witnesses that allegedly filed, I don't know how.
Well, and I don't, here's the other problem is, one, I don't know whether they were actually granted, whether they just reached an ex parte stage and then were later dismissed, whether they were voluntarily dismissed. So as both parties know, anybody can file anything.
Of course.
And so the mere filing of one, to me, is not as relevant as whether or not you have evidence of one being granted.
Yes, Judge. And they were granted as far as the initial 30-day temporary TPO. But then I believe, I'm sorry, Judge, what was that?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say after that, I believe they were withdrawn.
Okay, then I don't see the relevance today.
I'm sorry, Judge. I don't see this for a second.
The fact I don't see the relevance today if they were not entered and after a full hearing and found to be a violation of the family violence statutes and were granted, whether Ms. Colley was under a 12-month order. If you had a copy of a 12-month TPO that was issued, I would be more inclined to allow it, but let's move on to something else.
Understood, Judge. And Judge, I do believe, just to, for future issues, I think there's a strong chance that something like this might come out on cross. And so as far as impeachment, though, it's still there.
We'll address it as we come to it.
Got it, Judge.
But
all
for
right.
now, we're not going down that road at this point.
Let me just see where I left off. Shulman, how many different numbers did Ms. Colley end up contacting you from?
I believe 10 or 11 fake or different numbers besides her listed number.
Judge, that's all I have.
Okay.